So I forgot where we were.
Talking about Japanese.
Oh yes, of course. So in the 30s, there was a very vibrant cinema coming out of Japan, but of course the most vibrant cinema was coming out of Germany and America at the time. So in my book, which is fiction, but the Japanese Minister for Cinema and Propaganda decides to forge an alliance with German cinema to counteract American, the American imperialist vision of, which came in the form of Charlie Chaplin, because he was very popular in Japan at the time, and he had actually visited Japan many times. And so what happened was that Charlie Chaplin was invited to have dinner with the Prime Minister, Inukai of Japan, at his house. And so Charlie Chaplin, who was like a superstar in Japan at the time, went to Prime Minister Inukai's house, and they were to have dinner, and at the same time there was a plot of 7 naval cadets to assassinate the Prime Minister and Charlie Chaplin in his house at the same time. So Charlie Chaplin was in the house during... having been there, now it's not working, sorry. And his son, Inukai's son, actually said, why don't you come to a sumo wrestling with me instead of having dinner with my boring father? And so Chaplin went away, but these naval cadets, who were basically, one could say, Japanese fascists, came into the house with pistols, and they hoped to kill both of them, but they only killed the Prime Minister. And so based on this little story, which I found fascinating, that someone, was actually trying to assassinate a comedian, I wrote this book. Yeah.
So in the book, Emil Nageli,
yes.
A central character, a Swiss filmmaker, gets...
Fictional, he doesn't exist. Yeah.
He gets, I'm talking about the book, the characters in the book, right. And he gets a contract from Goebbels, maybe, or someone else in the
propaganda ministry. The propaganda ministry.
Then he goes to Japan to make a film that will showcase the supremacy of Aryans or Germany to the world, and settles, probably settle the debate for all. But finally he couldn't do it. That's another story. So what was Germany doing, particularly under the Third Reich or Weimar Republic? What was German films like?
You mean in my book, or
no, in general?
Oh, right. Okay. In 1931, Weimar Republic had a very cinema. Sorry. Hello. I think it's working now. And it was very, at this time, the Nazis and the communists were battling each other in the street, and so the films that were made at this time were very, from every spectrum of ideology and non-ideology and humor and comedy and music films and musicals and slowly, little by little, the fascists kind of took over. But this is just putting it very simply. And so in my book, the Japanese people who are afraid of Charlie Chaplin are trying to team up with German cinema. And so the Germans, they write a letter to the Germans saying, send us a really good director to make a great propaganda film. So they send this Swiss guy who has absolutely no idea about anything. And he's supposed to make a horror movie, and he goes to Japan and none of this ever happens. It just, he fails completely. And yeah.
Okay, then that was a wonderful thing to read actually, going through the book. And talking about fascism, your previous novel, Imperium, was criticized particularly in Germany, and you were even labeled as a pro-fascist or fascist sympathizer.
I'm really glad you mentioned this because this was one person, one journalist.
Was there anything personal between you and him?
Well, I knew him personally, but yes. So this thing came out after I'd written the book Imperium, which is set in the German South Seas colonies of German New Guinea in 1901 at the time, and it was like all hell broke loose. That Der Spiegel is a large German news magazine, and then of course I'm not a fascist, I'm not a racist, and not an anti-Semite at all. But so this guy just said that. And he used my book to prove his point. And luckily, a lot of people stood up, a lot of writers and other journalists said this is complete rubbish, and it's just a personal vendetta of some kind. But then he kind of lost his job too, and he lost his publisher, and so he got in a lot of trouble. So, not that I feel sorry for him, because he tried to really, it was like a hit job. I mean, it was really nasty. And, but, you know, that's, I guess, and it was fiction too. So he, you know, yeah.
And rightfully, the current novel, The Dead, you are kind of speaking to power, or you are kind of portraying the power structures with a tinge of humor, sometimes hilariously, mocking certain historical figures, such as maybe Goebbels himself, a lot of people for that matter. So how do you write with such in such a fashion? And definitely this book has made you come out of any accusations of you being a fascist or anti-Semite.
You think this book was sort of my reply to? That's interesting. All I can say is, well, my wife says this is my worst book. I've written 7 novels, and she says this is the worst one. And when we talked before our talk, you also said it's extremely complex, and I think that's its problem. It's really short, but in this brevity of the book, I'm attempting too much, and maybe one of my attempts was to maybe expose or deconstruct totalitarianism by humor, which I think is the only way to sort of show. I think that's what totalitarian despots are most afraid is comedy.
Yeah.
And I think the way to criticize is by yes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
and that's almost an Orwell.
And we talked about Orwell earlier.
That's what I'm coming actually. There is an Orwellian aura to some parts of your book, if not in its entirety. So how do you relate? Orwell also wrote against fascism, a lot of things actually.
Well, it's funny that we were speaking about Orwell, because I just finished reading his biography 4 days ago, and he was a really, really nasty man, apparently. Well, he was a great writer, but not really nice guy. And so, of course, Orwell criticizing Stalinism with his two most famous books, Animal Farm and 1984. Both are a critique of Stalinism. Yet he was a socialist. He was a very strong. He had very strong feelings towards British socialism. He went to fight in the Spanish Civil War, and so I think 1984, is like, so Big Brother in essence is Stalin and Hitler kind of combined as a sort of hologram of each other, and so yeah, there is. I guess there is some of 1984 in the Dead, but I'm not sure where. But
yeah, somewhere it is there. While reading, I felt it definitely. Particularly, you introduced Charlie Chaplin in such a way. I don't know how to describe it. It's a sharp observation of his on-screen characters, and of course, the Charles Chaplin is a fictional character in this, completely out of his on-screen presence. And you did a paragraph there, and I thought you would be a film critic, if not a novelist, very well.
That's interesting because I studied at university. I studied film theory, and that's how that happened. And I love film, and my wife is a film director, and a lot of my ideas, films and dreams, and memory, of course, but mostly films and dreams, and so it was quite natural for me to write about films in the Dead.
Yeah.
And the Dead, the Dead are basically the characters on the silver screen. They're dead, but they live some kind of strange zombie vampire life. They're still alive, flickering, here. And of course, Charlie Chaplin in my book is a really, really nasty guy, and I suppose he was not very nice in real life, but he wasn't a super like really bad guy like in my book.
That happens in cinema, another kind of image. Yeah. It's nice you mentioned your wife and the German cinema. You yourself work for cinema as a writer or in maybe other various capacities. So,
only a screenwriter.
Yeah, how do you see German cinema now and in comparison with, I think it's a long question, but maybe you can answer very quickly. So what is German cinema compared to 1931 today?
It's a very good question, and I'm not sure I'm competent enough to answer it, but I think that certain countries or nations or cultures have sort of like elliptical cinema outputs. Like if you look at Italy, for instance, which was a great cinema nation in the 60s and 70s, and after that it just completely died. So and Germany, of course, was a great cinema in the 30s. There was a renaissance, with new Germans, with Fassbinder and Wim Wenders and these people. But now it's kind of really boring again. So I think all cultural outputs of certain cultures have sort of elliptical greatness, and then it disappears again. And my country, Switzerland, has never had a great cinema to this very day. It's never had any cinema. It's very poor in that sense. And yes, but my wife is now, she's German, but she's Swiss. Sorry, this is very hard for me to speak with. Can you still hear me? Okay, all right. And so she is now considered a Swiss film director, which is nice.
Yeah, so this conversation could go on and on actually, but we have a time limit, so that we will come to an abrupt conclusion actually, because we haven't touched many potential areas where we could speak more, and but that kind of things always stay there because of this kind of hurry schedule. So I think we'll take a few questions from the audience before we wrap it up. So please ask your questions as brief as possible.
If anybody have questions, please raise your hands.
Here on.
visual communication student actually. So I'm learning about cinema and a lot of other visual communication mediums. So there are a lot of films releasing very recently. And as you said, cinema has evolved from 1931 to what it is right now here. So do you think German films have been influenced by other cultures and other fashion in film or other films that has been released by other countries or the way they make it?
Yes, that's a very good question. I think that all art, no art is original. One is just basically copying things that have gone before. And this, in fact, is on the first page of Aristotle's Poetics, is what he says about tragedy or theater. He says that it's all stolen from other places. And I feel, this is basically what we do as writers and as filmmakers and as, let's say, creative people. We just steal, and we steal from our own dreams. We steal from things that have gone before, from films, from myths. And it may be a bit of a harsh word to say steal. Maybe borrow is more appropriate. So I think that's a very good question. I think everything is in repetition of things that have gone before. There's no original anything. I hope that answers you.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you. So my question was regarding any propaganda which is related to anti-establishment. So in India, we have had a culture of vigilante films or films that are anti-establishment in the genre, we can say. So do you think filmmakers who dabble in propaganda such as anti-establishment or pro-establishment, do they bear any social responsibility towards how the public may react to it or react from it?
I'm not sure if I understand the. Did you say indie films or avant-garde films or political films?
Yeah, like political films. So not just political in the sense like it's outright political, it could be political internally.
You mean propaganda films?
Yeah. So generally, the anti-establishment films are quite popular. So do you think the filmmakers who create such cinema, which are anti-establishment or have a certain propaganda, do they bear an inherent responsibility to be socially responsible to the people who watch it?
I find this question very difficult to answer because as soon as you make a film, you are the establishment. I don't think there's someone sitting in a cave somewhere making a film. You accept capitalism in its purest form because you need to make the film. You have to pay for the film stock, and so there's no. I don't think there's such a thing as anti-establishment cinema at all.
Thank you.
When you talk about these historic characters and about, especially criticizing historic characters, is there creative compulsion you feel, an artistic compulsion to talk about these things, or is it just that, or do you see in every story there are aspects of this and you would rather explore that than not? Or do you feel a sense of artistic compulsion to do it? How do you think about that as an artist?
I don't have any artistic compulsion whatsoever. I just start one day, I read a lot, I procrastinate a long time, and then I just begin and just use things that have gone before, and I don't plot to plan or anything. I just begin writing, and then I continue writing, and it can somewhat automatically, almost like a dream that has its own logic, like a dream logic, and then this is a bit of a cliche, but on page 40 or 50, your characters escape you. You cannot control them anymore. It's different in film, of course, because you have to plan it ahead of time. But in fiction, at least for me, it just the people I write about have their own life, and I have to follow them. I cannot make them anymore. They just tell me what to do. This is really cliche, but it's true. So no, I don't have any artistic vision or compulsion. No, I'd like to, but I don't.
Yeah, that's a question. Yeah, please.
My question is, you said about two languages, and your works are quite sharp and precision. And do you think there's a different reception in different countries?
Wow, I don't really know because I don't. The only reception that I understand is the reception of the languages that I can read or speak. So, I'm not aware of how things are received outside of France or, the UK. Or I have no idea what people think. And of course, there's a lot of confusion, and I like that confusion because I think it's really funny. And a lot of humorous moments happen through confusion and translation, of course. And so, yeah, happy to be trying. But I don't know what's going on, actually. I wish I did.
Yeah, you take it.
In the book that you in your book that you it's Gothic book, right? It is hailed as a Gothic book, your recent book, and it has too many convoluted topics, but it's written as a department about the screenwriter. My thing is, are you trying to prove a point or to show people that you weren't working immediately at that time after you came here? Or is it just your a bundle of ideas?
Well, I'd like to say it's just a bunch of ideas and it's not in reaction to anything. And one thing screenwriting has taught me is that it's much more difficult than writing fiction because it's much more controlled, and you, which I didn't know before I wrote my first script, that you cannot show or you cannot write about interior processes when you're writing a screenplay because everything has to be shown through dialogue and subtext of dialogue and subtext of dialogue, but it's not possible to have, as in fiction, you can meander off and people have memories of thoughts and memories and shadows of memories and thoughts. But screenwriting, and it's very humbling as a novelist to come to screenwriting because you have to kind of be much more disciplined, and you only have 100 pages, and it's quite formalistic and beautiful because it just shows you that fiction is very limiting, while screenwriting is very, it expands into this massive universe of the screen, and so I'm very happy to have been able to write screenplays together with my wife, and I'm good at dialogue, she's good at everything else, but I can do dialogue.
Do we have any questions?
So I would like to. So I would like to, before closing the session, I would like to kind of, how do I do this? Just announce.
It's called a plug.
So the Malayalam translation of a novel by Christian Kracht is available now. In fact, it has just been made available, the printed version.
It was on the train.
It was on the train when we, half an hour ago, when we met the agent half an hour ago. So the book is there in the stall, and Christian would be very happy to sign. Yeah, he would be very happy to sign the copies if anybody would like to get it from him.
Can we see how much it costs?
It costs 210.
Okay.
Would you like to say something about this?
I'm very grateful to Sri Govind of DC Books and to the festival for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to speak foolishly in front of you. And I'm very grateful to Shamseer ji for hosting me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. It was a really engaging session here. Maybe we should.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for making this a great success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful and interesting session.